It's early in the harvest at Flam's Orchard in southern Illinois. Pickers work through the blistering heat of a summer morning, choosing the first peaches of the season, just like Jeff Flam's family has done every year since 1888.
When you look around at all this, does it feel like home?
Oh, it is home. I grew up right there in that house. You got to live it and you got to believe in it, or you're not going to make it.
Flam is a fifth-generation farmer now fearing for the future. In the last 4 years, he says the hundreds of acres of fruit they farm here have been threatened by a growing concern.
We didn't know what it was. Never seen anything like that, you know. We had several people come and look, and everybody had the same conclusion.
He says agriculture experts, environmentalists, and even state officials all agreed the damage was likely caused by dicamba, an herbicide that kills weeds. It's been around for decades, but it's been more widely used since 2016, when the Environmental Protection Agency cleared the way for dicamba to be sprayed over the top of certain crops. Many corn, cotton, and soy growers now rely on it to control resistant weeds that threaten their yield. The problem is Flam doesn't use it, never has. He's the suspected victim of what experts call dicamba drift, when the volatile chemical travels miles away from where it's sprayed.
I've seen it roll peach leaves so tight they look like green beans.
The damage it creates is something you can easily spot as you walk the orchard rows. Curled leaves top the peach and apple trees. And the trickle-down effect, Flam says, hurts the quality and size of the fruit. With some trees hit so hard, over time, they don't survive.
So if you had to ballpark it, how much has this cost you?
Just in lost production on apples alone, I'd say it's north of $1 million.
What's that like when someone else sprays something and it's impacting you that significantly?
It's kind of tough. You know, it's really frustrating because there's nothing you can do about it. And you kind of hold your breath every summer because you know it's coming.
Flam is far from the only farmer holding his breath, anticipating damage he can't control from dicamba drift, which scientists say is heavily influenced by temperature and wind conditions. From coast to coast, the problem has destroyed crops, divided the agriculture industry, and planted seeds of hostility, with one dispute even ending in murder in an Arkansas town.
According to Sheriff Dale Cook, the shooting happened after the two got into an argument.
The preliminary information, it was about this dicamba drift.
InvestigateTV wanted to see the scope of dicamba drift, so our national investigative team requested complaints from 18 states where experts say use of the chemical is most prominent. Ultimately, 9 responded, turning up nearly 4,000 dicamba-related complaints since 2017. They include an Indiana woman forced to defend her plants from drift with a garden hose, a Texas grower whose vineyard was significantly damaged after a neighbor sprayed on a 100-degree day in 20-mile-per-hour winds, and a frustrated Oklahoma farmer who lost his crop, telling pesticide enforcers dicamba should be outlawed until it can be made safer.
There's a very clear line between those who are using dicamba and those who are not.
And those who aren't are still paying the price.
Yes, absolutely.
Danielle Melgar with the U.S. Public Interest Research Group, or PIRG, says the price nationally is steep, with a report from the EPA painting an even more dire picture than our data shows. Last year alone, the agency was aware of more than 3,400 dicamba incidents, impacting more than 1 million acres of crops in 27 states. And we discovered one of the chemical's leading producers, Bayer, has already agreed to a settlement totaling $400 million for farmers who've dealt with dicamba damage. But PIRG and others say that's not enough. They want the EPA to issue an outright ban on dicamba.
I think of it as it's like secondhand smoke. We need to protect the people who are choosing not to use that substance.
We've learned the steps meant to protect are confusing for farmers and state agencies. The EPA lays out restrictions on things designed to cut down drift, but states are often in charge of enforcing the rules, and they don't have the power to make changes on their own. So dicamba hovers in limbo over label jargon and lawsuits, blowing in the wind on a whim, disregarding borders.
These herbicides are not respecting state boundaries, and your neighbor in another state could be using dicamba and it drifts into your farm, and so you're completely unprotected unless the EPA steps up.
If I had my crops damaged by, a neighbor or somebody, I would be extremely frustrated. I feel their pain for sure.
That's why Oregon farmer John Iverson says he's so careful with the dicamba he considers crucial to the success of the grass seed grown on his family farm.
Without dicamba, you're more likely to get a weedy mess.
I'm in my Wilmar with my low volatile nozzles.
For the 6 years he's been spraying, Iverson has taken special precautions. But it's not just for his neighbors. He says it's to protect his own crops. In fact, he grows grapes and flowers right alongside the grass seed that's sprayed with dicamba.
If I sprayed it on the grapes, it'd kill the grapes.
But not having dicamba, he says, could kill his business altogether.
That's probably the most drastic result. I hope it wouldn't get to that point. That is the biggest concern for sure.
It's a serious concern shared by farmers across the country, specifically corn, soy, and cotton growers, along with pesticide makers and ag trade groups, who say a ban isn't the answer.
If we work together on this, a lot of times we can find a solution that works for everybody. And I'd hope the EPA would take more of that position than, we're just going to pull it because we had some issues.
First of all, you can't have a ban, or you're going to have weeds instead of soybeans.
U.S. Senator Chuck Grassley, a farmer himself, is among lawmakers who have written the EPA, saying it shouldn't limit the product any further.
So are they saying to the farmer that is abiding by all those rules that you're going to cut that product out because there's somebody that hasn't applied it according to the label or the regulations set by EPA? No, you go after that farmer.
But many state agriculture offices are already struggling with increased complaints and investigations. The files we reviewed show there's only a short window to actually detect the chemical, and it's hard to identify who's responsible, even when investigators do find evidence. Grassley says states need more funding to police the problem, and he wants the EPA to clear up uncertainty around dicamba. The agency, which declined our interview requests, says it's working to collect more incident data and is evaluating whether dicamba can be used in a way that doesn't pose unreasonable risks to vulnerable crops.
And if I don't hear from them pretty soon, I'm going to get on them.
Jeff Flam, the orchard owner, says he and other farmers on both sides of the dicamba divide feel powerless as they wait for answers from the EPA. For now, he's working the fields his family built, wondering how the winds of fate will impact their legacy.
You have to be an eternal optimist to do what we do. If we can ever make enough noise, it'll go away. But we are definitely in a fight with a huge opponent.